Chapter 591, Blood Bladesman. No, impossible. Fire Ghost lay prostrate in the pit. The terrifying killing intent had suppressed him and shattered his bones. Blood poured profusely from his mouth. His face was red and there was unprecedented shock in his eyes. The oppression of the killing intent was similar to aura oppression. Just now, he had forced Xianxia to fall and faint by using aura oppression. He was able to do this because he was much more powerful than Xianxia. Now, this young man had just used killing intent to suppress him. It had been strong enough to cause him to fall and his bones to crack. How was that possible? Even the sovereigns or three ancestors were not as strong as this. Jian Wushuang, who had been forced to flee from the divine land, and who he held in contempt, had managed to perform this impossible feat. Fire Ghost was dumbfounded, but he suddenly had a strong desire to survive. Blood Bladesman. Master Blood Bladesman. Help me, please come help me. Fire Ghost roared. He knew that Blood Bladesman was hidden nearby and that he would come over if he noticed something happening here. If Blood Bladesman came, he would still have an opportunity to survive. The drill ground turned deathly silent. The clansmen looked at Jian Wushuang as they trembled in excitement. They had been yelling his name in their hearts. Their hero had finally shown up and his strength did not disappoint. Fire Ghost was a devil and very powerful, but compared to Jian Wushuang, he was as weak as an infant. Jian Wushuang had not even displayed any of his moves. He had merely used aura oppression on the evil Marquis to overcome him. What terrifying strength! What a frightening skill! How is this possible? Experts from the alchemy school and the imperial house of the Qianzong dynasty, and even the white-haired elder who had just returned from the divine land, widened their eyes in shock. This is the evil Marquis, who is the strongest among the 72 marquises. Sovereigns could defeat him, but they won't be able to do so using aura alone. Even if the legendary three ancestors show up, they might not have such a power. Under everyone's gazes, Jian Wushuang's gaze was steely as his killing intent violently pressed on Fire Ghost. Evil Marquis, Jian Wushuang said in a frosty tone, you're still hoping that Blood Bladesman will come to your aid, right? Fire Ghost was unable to move or speak under the oppression. It's a pity. Jian Wushuang looked at Fire Ghost while shaking his head. You won't have such an opportunity. Jian Wushuang raised his foot and stomped on his enemy's head. The terrifying power landed squarely on the panic-stricken evil Marquis. In the next moment, his head shattered into pieces. The famous evil Marquis, the #1 expert of the 72 marquises, died. He had trampled on the clansmen from Sword Marquis Mansion. Now, he had become a corpse. Jian Wushuang wore a grim expression as he surveyed the area. Blood Bladesman, you've been watching for so long. It's time you revealed yourself. The moment Jian Wushuang finished his words, a figure flashed and appeared on the drill ground. The figure was a skinny elder who was as scruffy as a beggar and had a hint of evil in his eyes. Blood Bladesman was one of the skyscraping realm experts who had forced Jian Wushuang to escape from the divine land. He was also one of the murderers responsible for the death of the sword ancestor. Hey, I came here to try my luck. I wondered whether I'll be able to find the cave mansion sword ancestor left. It seems that I made the right decision. Blood Bladesman had an evil smile on his face. Jian Wushuang, those old guys have been looking for you. They didn't expect that you've quietly returned. That's fine. Since you're back, I don't need to expend too much energy searching for Sword Ancestor Cave Mansion. Blood Bladesman stared with the young man, not concealing his surprise and delight. He had come to the Nanyang continent to get the location of Ancestor's land from the clansmen in Sword Marquis Mansion. He had let evil Marquis torture the clansmen for 3 days, but he had not obtained what he sought. He had been disappointed and ready to give up, but Jian Wushuang had appeared. How could he not be happy? Tell me, where is the cave mansion? I'll spare your life if you tell me, Blood Bladesman said in an evil tone. Blood Bladesman, are you done with your nonsense? Jian Wushuang glanced at him, expressionless. Blood Bladesman sneered. Boy, don't think you're powerful just because you've killed Fire Ghost. That's right. Your killing intent is strong. If I'm not wrong, You've comprehended Slaughter Dao, but that's only enough to deal with some Cloud Realm experts. It's useless against me. Stop talking. Jian Wushuang shook his head. He was tired of this elder's nonsense. His heart-killing sword appeared in his hand. He had been able to kill Fire Ghost with ease, but he now faced Blood Bladesman, a real skyscraping realm expert. Jian Wushuang would need to use his weapon if he wanted to kill the elder. His 330 feet golden sword Soul Phantom suddenly appeared behind him. The heart-killing sword lashed out. The seventh move of the heart-killing sword technique, Star River. The brilliant strike provided the only light in the entire area as it pierced through the void and appeared in front of Blood Bladesman. Its power erupted. Chapter 592, Blood Bladesman's Killing Move. Seeing his opponent showing his move, Blood Bladesman sneered. You are not worried that your sword Marquis Mansion will disappear if we fight in there? A fight between two powerful experts would cause a great commotion. They all had the battle strength of the skyscraping realm. If they had an all-out fight, the sword Marquis Mansion would not be strong enough to sustain it. Moreover, the two Saint Realm experts were unable to display their full strength in such a small place like the sword Marquis Mansion. However, Jian Wushuang was eager to battle and looked as if he was not worried about it at all. You won't have such an opportunity. Jian Wushuang's frosty voice resounded through the area. The power of his sword Shadow fully erupted into action. Boom! The space was split as his sword Shadow appeared in front of Blood Bladesman. What? Blood Bladesman, who had remained calm and composed, was suddenly shocked by this sword Shadow. He felt its terrifying power and immediately reacted. And the moment a blood-red saber appeared in his hand, he brandished it without hesitation. This attack contained a power that was strong enough to destroy the world. The cold and dazzling saber light lashed out. The two strikes smashed into each other. Bang! A deep sound of their impact resounded, which shook Blood Bladesman. How is that possible? Blood Bladesman looked at his hands, which were bleeding. The sharp pain rendered him unable to hold his blood-red saber. Had his saber been knocked away from just one attack? Their initial confrontation produced inconceivable power waves that were strong enough to ruin the entire sword Marquis Mansion. However, Jian Wushuang radiated a blast of terrifying aura to cover up the power waves. Boom! The power waves erupted, but no spectator got hurt as Jian Wushuang's aura had sustained it. It's impossible! Blood Bladesman was dumbfounded and could not believe it. How powerful this young man was! Even the sword ancestor at his peak might have been inferior to him. It was amazing that Jian Wushuang could have made such rapid progress in such a short period of time. It had been less than a year since he was forced to leave the Divine Land. But now, he had gotten stronger than the sword ancestor? Go to hell! Jian Wushuang ignored his opponent's shock and attacked him again. Blood Bladesman went pale, a sense of crisis rising in his heart. You want me to die? You go first. Blood Bladesman suddenly roared as he waved his hand. A blood shadow flew across the void. Jian Wushuang recognized it the moment it dashed out. It was a sharp scarlet dagger and was quickly approaching. It moved so fast that it would be difficult for Jian Wushuang to avoid this attack. Nevertheless, he did not intend to dodge it. Upon seeing this, Blood Bladesman showed a frosty smile. D. Blood Bladesman cried, his face twisting with ferocity. He was famous for the blood saber. Many people thought his blood saber was the blood-red saber that he used. Actually, he was called Blood Bladesman because of this moving scarlet dagger. That dagger was his real killing move. He had used it to kill many powerful opponents since he started his cultivation. He had saved the day many times by using it, so he thought it would also help him this time. This scarlet dagger with terrifying power crashed into Jian Wushuang. It pricked his clothes and landed on his chest, leaving just a light white mark there. The smile on Blood Bladesman's face froze at once. My scarlet dagger has only left a white mark on the young man's chest. It didn't prick his skin. This. Blood Bladesman was petrified. At this point, the cold sword shadow that Jian Wushuang displayed charged smoothly and pierced Blood Bladesman's body. This skyscraping realm expert, who had a good reputation in the ancient world, died. Jian Wushuang stood on the ground as he touched that white mark on his chest, with a hint of scorn flashing through his eyes. Blood Bladesman's powerful killing move was able to kill skyscraping realm experts who came from the Divine Land or other plane worlds and did not have powerful bodies. However, under the attack of his killing move, skyscraping realm experts in the monster continent like the 33 temple masters from the monster exterminating league could be seriously injured, but even the weakest would not die. Human warriors from the monster continent were more powerful than warriors from the other plane worlds. Jian Wushuang had a terrifying body, so he was not hurt by Blood Bladesman's killing move. He walked toward Blood Bladesman and waved his hand to take the interspatial ring, blood red saber, and scarlet dagger. Then, he said while looking downward, "Blood Bladesman, don't worry. You are just the first one. It won't take long for someone to accompany you. Those skyscraping realm experts who had attacked the Sword Ancestor and forced me to flee from the Divine Land, I'll kill them all. And Su Ming, I won't forget him. I'll get my revenge on all of them, one by one." Jian Wushuang clenched his hands and his eyes were filled with killing intent. Numerous clansmen were staring at Jian Wushuang in admiration. This legend in their eyes had appeared at a critical moment and killed all the enemies with his heaven-defying strength. He had not disappointed them indeed. At this point, Jian Wushuang turned to look at his clansmen. The first one that he saw was Jian Meng'er. He calmly looked at Jian Meng'er, who wore a complicated expression on her face. Then he waved his hand and threw an elixir to her. Chapter 593, Returning to the Ancestors' Land. This elixir can regenerate broken limbs. Give it to the little girl. Jian Meng'er was stunned. Then she took the elixir and, being surprised and delighted, walked toward the little girl whose arm had been cut off by Fire Ghost. "Lina, take it. Be quick." Jian Meng'er's voice trembled as she spoke. The little girl was crying in pain. And after she swallowed the elixir, her severed arm started regrowing again. She quickly made a full recovery. Upon seeing this, Jian Meng'er cried out joyfully as she gratefully looked at her savior. Jian Wushuang gave her a glance but said nothing, then he went over to Jian Xinhong. Jian Xinhong, who had fainted because of the aura suppression, had still not regained consciousness. Jian Wushuang bent over and gave Jian Xinhong an elixir that emitted a light scent. He had many high-level elixirs, which were his trophies from the Divine Land and Monster Continent. Jian Xinhong did not wake up, but he looked better after taking the elixir. Jian Wushuang felt relieved and then stood up, finding his clansmen walking toward him and gazing at him in admiration. He breathed deeply and said solemnly, "Everyone, I'm back." Jian Wushuang quickly helped the Sword Marquis Mansion turn the corner and recover to a normal condition. Although Fire Ghost had tortured those clansmen for several days, only a few of them got killed, so the Sword Marquis Mansion did not suffer great losses. One day later, Jian Xinhong woke up. Jian Wushuang sat in the front of the meeting hall accompanied by Jian Xinhong, who looked a bit pale, while those elders, including Jian Meng'er, stood below. Besides them, experts from the alchemy school, Di Shi, and Hong Shuzi were also present at the meeting. "My little friend, Wushuang, when you left, you asked me to take care of the Sword Marquis Mansion, but today, alas, I'm sorry." Hong Shuzi sighed. "I'm also sorry," said the sect master of the alchemy school, Wang Yang. 2 days ago, our alchemy school received the news that the Sword Marquis Mansion was in trouble, so I immediately sent a Saint Realm expert here, but I didn't expect that the enemy would be so powerful. He killed my elder in just a single move. It was the truth. A Saint Realm expert from the alchemy school had tried to protect the Sword Marquis Mansion, but he was killed by Fire Ghost with only one move. Everyone, regarding this matter, I understand. Fire Ghost was the supreme expert in the Divine Land. It's understandable that you were unable to resist him, Jian Wushuang said without a hint of blame in his tone. Upon hearing this, Wang Yang, Hong Shuzi, and the other experts felt relieved. They had been afraid that Jian Wushuang would vent his anger on them, but obviously, Jian Wushuang was not such a person. "My little friend, Wushuang, Fire Ghost had forced those clansmen to tell him the location of the Ancestors' Land. It seems that many people have been targeting the Ancestors' Land, said a white-haired elder who had just returned from the divine land. Right. There are many experts and they're also supreme beings. But don't worry, Jian Wushuang continued in an icy voice. I'll go to the divine land and kill them all. Jian Wushuang was filled with killing intent. He was remembering all of those experts who had forced him to flee. After staying there for a day, Jian Wushuang was about to leave. Mansion Master, I'll leave my blood puppet in the Sword Marquis mansion. If anyone attacks our mansion, you can use this blood puppet to repel them. He had received this blood puppet from the ancestors' land. When he had just arrived at the divine land, the blood puppet had greatly helped him and had saved him several times. Nevertheless, with the improvement of his strength, the blood puppet became almost no use to him. Jian Wushuang was easily able to kill an 8-cloud realm expert, or a sovereign, or even a skyscraping realm expert, so there was no need for him to use this blood puppet. It could be a good choice to let this blood puppet be the trump card of the Sword Marquis mansion. Jian Wushuang also gave Jian Xinhong many blood gems, which were enough to activate the blood puppet many times. After everything was arranged well, Jian Wushuang set off. Jian Wushuang did not return to the divine land, but instead, he went to the ancestors' land, the abyss in the innumerable huge mountains. Although Jian Wushuang had been here many times, he had never perceived anything special and only felt that the abyss was mysterious because he had been weak at that time. However, this time, he was able to see it through with only one glance. This abyss is actually a formation. Jian Wushuang was astonished, but he immediately realized that this formation was aimed at avoiding the exploration from other experts. This formation is exquisite. If I had not visited here several times and learned its secret, I would not have found out that the Sword Ancestors' cave mansion was in the abyss. I might have thought that it's only an ordinary dangerous place. Jian Wushuang sighed. The skyscraping realm experts who killed the Sword Ancestor almost turned the plain world over searching for the Sword Ancestor cave mansion. They had also launched a search in the Nanyang continent, but they gained nothing because of the protection of this formation. Jian Wushuang stepped into the abyss without a second thought. The moment he landed on the ancestors' land, the two puppet fighters, Jin Ling and Mu Shan, walked over. Jian Wushuang, this is... Jin Ling and Mu Shan stared at Jian Wushuang with an odd expression. They could tell that compared to several years ago, Jian Wushuang had greatly changed. They were not clear about how many changes that he had made, but they knew that the young man was now much more powerful than before. Chapter 594, The Last Test. It's been many years since we met last. How are you? Jian Wushuang asked in a toneless voice. Jian Wushuang, it hasn't been that long. You're already back from the divine land. Jin Ling responded with a hint of surprise. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. He had not only returned from the divine land, he had even traveled to the monster continent. I come to take the third test, Jian Wushuang said. There were 3 tests in the ancestors' land and he had passed the second test before he left the Nanyang continent, so only the third test remained. The third test is difficult, but looking at you, you're pretty confident, right? Jin Ling stared at Jian Wushuang curiously. A little bit. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. He was now even stronger than Sword Ancestor, who had been at his peak. Therefore, he was capable of passing all the tests Sword Ancestor left. Follow me. Jin Ling and Mu Shan led the way, quickly arriving at the deepest part of the ancestors' land. A fathomless long tunnel appeared in front of Jian Wushuang, with a lilac restriction covering its entrance. This restriction was extraordinarily powerful. Anyone that wanted to enter the tunnel had to break it. This tunnel is connected to the real core of the ancestors' land, where Sword Ancestor left his things. Jin Ling said, as for the third test, it should be this restriction, but I'm not sure about it. After all, Mu Shan and I are unable to enter this tunnel, so we don't know if there are other tests inside. Really? Jian Wushuang frowned as he looked over at the lilac restriction. He started to approach it. Jian Wushuang, this restriction is quite powerful. It has an amazing defensive and offensive power. You should be careful. Jin Ling, who was still in the process of speaking, was suddenly stunned. Mu Shan was also petrified. They watched as Jian Wushuang casually punched the restriction. As for the result, the powerful restriction instantly collapsed in front of their eyes. He smashed the restriction with a casual punch. Is it really that easy? Both Jin Ling and Mu Shan cried in shock. As far as they knew, if an expert wanted to break the restriction, he had to at least reach the sovereign level. Sovereigns were supreme experts in the divine land. Jian Wushuang must be stronger than a sovereign since he broke the restriction with a single punch. It's amazing for Jian Wushuang to have made such rapid progress in such a short period of time. So fast. Jin Ling could not hold back her surprise. They had witnessed Jian Wushuang grow up step by step. When he initially arrived here, Jian Wushuang was so weak that he was not even qualified to do the first test. Now, after a dozen years had passed, his strength had reached an incredible level. The third test is a piece of cake, Jian Wushuang said with a faint smile. He had narrowly escaped death when he was taking the first and second test. However, it was too easy for him to pass the third test. What will you do, wait for me or go inside with me? Jian Wushuang turned to look at the two puppet fighters. We'll stay here and wait for you, Jin Ling replied. Jian Wushuang shrugged his shoulders and walked inside. The dark tunnel was not long, so it wasn't long before a shabby secret chamber came into view. Jian Wushuang stepped into the secret chamber and immediately saw two tokens on the table in the front of the chamber. Other than the two tokens, there was nothing in there. Jian Wushuang approached while observing the tokens. The first one was a gold token which radiated magic power in waves. It looked very mysterious in his eyes. Two gilded words were carved on it, Ancient World. The Ancient World token. Jian Wushuang immediately understood. Emperor Xiao had said that the Sword Ancestor had prepared an Ancient World token for him. It should be this one. This is the Ancient World token. Jian Wushuang picked up the gold token and studied it for a while, but he could not figure it out. All he knew was that the power surrounding the token was similar to space waves. Countless skyscraping realm experts all desire this Ancient World token. Jian Wushuang sighed while shaking his head. Because of it, the Sword Ancestor had been hunted by so many skyscraping realm experts and eventually died. Now, Jian Wushuang had received this Ancient World token that the Sword Ancestor left. It could be said that the Sword Ancestor sacrificed himself to give the young man an opportunity. Jian Wushuang put this Ancient World token into his interspatial ring and then looked at the second token. It was an ordinary message token. Jian Wushuang smashed it and a message came out. I'm Jian Chen. Jian Wushuang was a bit surprised, but he immediately realized that this token contained some information Sword Ancestor left. Jian Wushuang began listening carefully. I was born aloof and proud, so I would rather die than surrender to my enemies. I accidentally received an Ancient World token, but the news leaked out, causing numerous skyscraping realm experts to chase. Ha, they wanted me to hand over the Ancient World token. However, I'd rather die or destroy the Ancient World token than give it to them. Sword Ancestor told his story and left several words for his descendants. He really was quite stubborn. Jian Wushuang said to himself. Sword Ancestor mentioned that he was too obstinate. Even when he was seriously injured and unable to fight back against the numerous skyscraping realm experts, he would rather destroy the Ancient World token than hand it over. As a result, he was killed by those skyscraping realm experts. If he had not been so stubborn, he would not have been killed. That's his nature. Jian Wushuang sighed as he shook his head. Sword Ancestor, don't worry. As for those people who murdered you, I'll kill them all. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands, slightly bowed to space in front of him, and then left. Chapter 595, Marquis Lanyu. Jian Wushuang left the Ancestor's land after obtaining the Ancient World token. Next. It's time to go to the Divine Land. Killing intent flashed in his eyes. However, there were no wormholes connecting the Nanyang continent to the Divine Land, so Jian Wushuang had to travel there on foot. The first time he went, it had taken him a year to travel to the Divine Land. He was weak at that time, so he walked slowly, not to mention that practicing on his way to the Divine Land had also delayed him. But now, He had become much more powerful. It only took him several days to arrive at the Divine Land. There was an exquisite pavilion named the Heaven Secret Pavilion. It had a good reputation in the Divine Land because it was said that 4 marquises and a sovereign guarded it. The Heaven Secret Pavilion was known for being the #1 intelligence organization. In a secret chamber of the Heaven Secret Pavilion, a black-robed elder respectfully handed Jian Wushuang a pile of documents that were filled with information. "Sir, this is what you need." Jian Wushuang paid with raw gems and then flipped through it by himself. It provided detailed information about what had happened in the Divine Land during the period while he was gone, including the rise and fall of experts. It also contained some information on the 3 ancestors. Jian Wushuang kept reading. The greatest change in the Divine Land was that a 4th ancestor appeared. It was Su Ming. Su Ming had fought with Blind Emperor. As a result, he made a breakthrough to the skyscraping realm at a critical moment and killed Blind Emperor. Since he had reached the skyscraping realm, he was qualified to become an ancestor. He should have been named Sword Ancestor, but there had been a Sword Ancestor in the Divine Land, so Su Ming had to use another title, Sword Demon. Currently, the 4 ancestors were the Holy Ancestor, the Spirit Ancestor, the Stone Ancestor and the Demon Ancestor. They were the topmost existences in the Divine Land. The number of sovereigns had also lessened to 8 because of Su Ming's promotion. Some small changes had occurred among the marquises while Jian Wushuang was away, but there were still 72 marquises in the Divine Land. Jian Wushuang glanced through the information about the marquises, but he did not pay them any mind until he came across a name that amazed him: Marquis Lanyu. Marquis Lanyu. Jian Wushuang carefully read her information. After a while, a meaningful smile grew on his face. That little girl has grown a lot over the last few years. On a magnificent mountain range stood a towering mansion, which was the residence of Marquis Lanyu, one of the 72 marquises. As a peerless genius, she had rapidly risen to become a marquis over the last few years. It was said that Marquis Lanyu was just 30 years old. She had amazing talent when she was a child, but she had been afflicted by witch poison for several years. Ever since she had been detoxified, her talent had started to recover and she had improved at an unbelievable speed. Currently, she had made a breakthrough from a Saint Realm expert to a famous marquis. On the empty ground of this mansion, a cyan-dressed lady was practicing her swordsmanship alone. She looked gorgeous, possessing both a heroic spirit and a sexy figure while radiating a peerless charm. However, the sword moves she displayed were swift and powerful. Each sword shadow she launched was as fast as lightning and strong enough to kill an ordinary lord. This cyan-dressed lady was Marquis Lanyu. Shua! The cold streak of sword light lashed out and pierced the air before her, causing sword essence waves to spread out. Nice! A toneless voice came from nearby. Marquis Lanyu was a bit surprised as she looked over at the source. When she saw the black-robed youth with a long sword on his back staring at her, her pretty eyes suddenly bulged wide. "Master!" Marquis Lanyu cried out, looking surprised and delighted. "You've already become a marquis, but you still remember me?" Jian Wushuang replied with a faint smile. Marquis Lanyu quickly walked over. "Master, I pay my respects to you." Marquis Lanyu knelt down and bowed to her master with respect. She was Lin Lan. Jian Wushuang had accepted her as his disciple right after arriving at the Divine Land. At that time, Jian Wushuang had used the heavenly creation skill to refine her witch poison, allowing Lin Lan the ability to start a new life. Then, he had helped Lin Lan break off the engagement with the Luo family. Those things were engraved in her mind. Although she was a marquis and had a high status in the Divine Land, she had never forgotten her master who had helped her so much. After all, her master changed her fate. "Get up." Jian Wushuang gestured to his disciple before Lin Lan stood up. "When I left, you had just barely made it to the Saint Realm, but now you've reached this level during the last few years. It's brilliant." Jian Wushuang acclaimed. He marveled at his disciple's achievement. Lin Lan responded with modesty, "All my achievements are because of you, master. I just helped you clear the witch poison. As for what you've achieved, it's because of your own ability. It's none of my business." Jian Wushuang shook his head and continued, "I've seen you practicing your swordsmanship. You're good. Master, thanks for your compliments. That's swordsmanship. Lin Lan had not finished her words yet. Little Lan. A cry was heard, then a red-haired man slowly walked over. Dear, come here. Lin Lan instantly went to pull her husband toward her master. Dear, this is my master, the one I've mentioned a lot to you.